Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Chem here, and today we're diving into a truly cinematic explainer on the hidden structures lurking inside our data. We're going to be focusing on boxplots, violin plots, and exactly how we understand quartiles, the interquartile range, outliers, and the comparison of multiple massive datasets. We're going to explore the elegant curves of these visualizations and uncover the truth behind a very specific mathematical mystery. Let's get right into it. Okay, so picture this. If you have ever plotted data or looked for outliers, you've undoubtedly used the 1.5 interquartile range rule. I mean, it's practically a law of nature in statistics at this point, right? But as good data scientists, we've got to question everything. Never just take things at face value. Why on earth do we multiply the IQR by exactly 1.5? Why not 1? Why not 2? Or maybe 1.7? Well, to solve this little mystery, we have to start at the very foundation of our numbers.
And that brings us to part 1, quartiles and the IQR. Let's take a quick look at how we summarize our data mathematically.
Let's walk through this using some real-world data from a university study. Imagine a local bookshop that recorded exactly how many books each customer bought in a single day. The values range all the way from 0 right up to 95. Now, to find the interquartile range, the IQR, we just put all our data points in order from smallest to largest. Then we find our median, Q2, hanging out exactly in the middle. For this data, it averages out to 1. Next up, we find the median of the lower half of our numbers, Q1, which is 0, and then the median of the upper half, Q3, which gives us 2.5. The IQR is just simply Q3 minus Q1. So 2.5 minus 0 leaves us with an IQR of exactly 2.5.
And boom, just like that, by calculating the IQR, that one customer who bought 95 books is immediately and mathematically exposed as a massive outlier. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is that by relying on the interquartile range instead of the total spread of all the numbers, our baseline statistics aren't totally destroyed by that one incredibly enthusiastic reader.
So, how do we actually translate that IQR math into a visual language? Well, let's move on to part 2, the anatomy of a boxplot.
Notice the sheer elegance of John Tukey's classic architecture here. It's a perfect visual representation of the 5-number summary. See that main rectangular box? That contains exactly the middle 50% of your data. Literally, that is your IQR, stretching right from Q1 up to Q3. The solid line resting inside the box is your median. And then, of course, we have those lines extending outward, affectionately known as the whiskers. But guys, this begs the ultimate question. Where exactly do we draw the line? Where do the whiskers end and the actual outliers begin?
Which leads us directly back to our initial mathematical mystery in part 3, the magic of 1.5. How do we mathematically define those boundaries? Well, what if we just use a scale of 1? The math tells us that if we multiply the IQR by 1, our whiskers will only capture data up to 2.025 standard deviations from the mean in a Gaussian distribution. Honestly, this makes our plot way too exclusive. We'd end up flagging a ton of perfectly normal data points as false outliers, all because our decision range is just way too small. Okay, let's swing the pendulum the other way. What if we use a scale of 2? If we do that, the math reaches way out to 3.375 standard deviations from the mean. Now we're too inclusive. The decision range gets so massive that it actually swallows up the real, legitimate outliers and treats them like normal data points. That completely defeats the purpose of the whole exercise. And right here is where we find the breathtaking mathematical elegance of 1.5. When we multiply the IQR by 1.5, we hit exactly 2.7 standard deviations from the mean. Why is that so beautiful? Because it aligns almost perfectly with the Gaussian distribution's famous 3 sigma rule, which states that about 99.72% of our useful data lies within 3 standard deviations. 1.5 gets us incredibly close to that 3 sigma ideal. Sure, to get exactly 3 sigma, we'd technically have to multiply by 1.7, but 1.5 is just a much more symmetrical, elegant number to work with in our formulas. It's the absolute sweet spot. Math really is the language of our world, isn't it? But hold on a second. As amazing as the boxplot is, it does have a fatal flaw when you're dealing with bimodal data. So it is time for part 4. Enter the violin plot.
See, if your dataset has 2 completely distinct peaks, a boxplot is just going to smooth it all over and pretend it's a standard bell curve. That's exactly why I absolutely love this analogy from the biomedical data world.
A box plot is a floor plan, while a violin plot is a 3D tour. Invented by Hinz and Nelson back in 1997, the violin plot doesn't just show you the walls and the center of your data, it reveals the true nuance, the multiple peaks, and those hidden clusters that a box plot just totally paves over. The secret engine actually powering the violin plot is something called kernel density estimation, or KDE. Think of it as a mathematical method used to estimate the probability density function of a continuous variable. Or, in much simpler terms, it's essentially a visual heat map of your numbers, showing you exactly where your data points occur most frequently. And this is exactly what gives the violin plot its unique, curvy, mirrored shape.
Let's break down the anatomy of this remarkable graph. The width of the violin at any given point indicates the frequency or the density of the data. The wider it gets, the higher the probability that data points exist right there. It's mirrored on both sides to give it that really pleasing symmetrical look. Now, when you see peaks and valleys, like areas where it bulges out and pinches in, that instantly reveals multimodality, which just means you've got multiple distinct groups hiding inside your population. And here's my favorite part. Beautifully, it often contains a miniature box plot right inside its core, so you still get all your median and IQR summary statistics in one place.
This next one brilliantly illustrates the real-world power of the violin plot. We're looking at actual data from Hinz and Nelson's academic paper showing total compensation for professors. Just look at the wiggliest parts of these plots and those really long, thin tails extending upward. You can instantly see clusters where the salaries are heavily concentrated, and you can track exactly how the high earners tail off. A standard box plot would have just turned this into a rigid, boring rectangle, completely hiding the complex reality of how these professors are actually being paid. So you might be wondering, which one do you actually choose? Welcome to Part 5, the Ultimate Data Showdown.
All right, let's run a rapid-fire comparative analysis so you know exactly when to deploy each tool. If you just need simple summary statistics, use the box plot. If you need to see the density and the true shape of the distribution, use the violin plot. If you suspect your data is bimodal, meaning it has multiple peaks, remember that the box plot will hide it, but the violin plot will reveal it. But honestly, here is the most critical deciding factor: sample size. You absolutely want to use box plots for your small to medium datasets, anything under 30 samples, just to avoid overcomplicating things. But for massive datasets, especially if you're comparing multiple groups across thousands of cells in biological omics-level data, the violin plot is absolutely essential. A box plot would just become a solid block of overlapping dots, but the violin plot cleanly compresses all that massive scale into a beautiful, readable signal.
We've journeyed all the way from the rigid mathematical boundaries of the 1.5 IQR rule right to the sweeping, density-revealing curves of kernel density estimation. So I want to leave you with this provocative challenge today. Are your summary statistics hiding the true story of your data? The next time you sit down and generate a simple box plot, take a moment to ask yourself what hidden shapes, clusters, and secrets might be lurking just beneath the surface of those numbers. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning everything, and I will see you next time.